Can you take us back to your brain injury and what that experience was like for you?
Absolutely. First, since we're now officially recording, I want to say thank you so much, Parker, for having me, man. For those, who are watching, I've been following your Brain Injury Tribe social media platforms for a while now, and it's just awesome to see a face, to something I've been following for so long. And when I say see a face, I know what you've looked like, but to be able to talk to you face to face is pretty unique, and I'm excited to do this with you. So my accident was in 2015, and I always like to say it was a day full of choices. And I always start off by saying, like, we make hundreds of choices a day, thousands. And, but for me, that day was defined by one simple choice, a thoughtless choice, and that was to remove my seatbelt, getting off an exit. I mean, we had the exit was within sight because because the pictures of the car accident was on the exit. And we were traveling about 70 miles per hour, and I removed my seatbelt, not sure why, don't remember actually doing it. As a backseat passenger, probably thought I was completely safe. Moved it, and within that time, a ladder had fallen off a truck in front of us. And the driver swerved instinctually to avoid the ladder. And eventually, the car was spun out, and when it hit grass, it flipped off the road. And in that time, I was halfway ejected, head first out the back window, sustaining what we know as a severe traumatic brain injury. Rushed to the hospital, and I want to make this clear. This part of my story, right when the car accident happened, I like to say, doesn't belong to me. And the reason I say that is I was unconscious, and I don't remember, but everything from this point, my family, my friends, my siblings, they do remember. So this part of the story belongs to them. Immediately unconscious, bleeding out. I had a military medic on scene immediately, headed back to work. Praise God. Assessed the scenes, pretty much saved my life on scene, stopped me from aspirating on my own blood. Taken to the hospital, my family was called in, and this is a story. This is part of my story that hits me a little deeper now because I have two kids, I have two daughters. But when I used to tell the story in the beginning, this part of the story, it was still was impactful, but now I feel it in an emotional level that I didn't before. And that's my mom and dad were called, got to the hospital and told that you need to call in the rest of the family because your youngest child, isn't going to make it. He's on life support, and his body is just not in good shape. The brain is swelling, and calling the rest of the family to say goodbye. So, that pretty much what they were telling my family was prepare to set up for a funeral. I mean, and the reason today it hits me because I have daughters, and now I just think like that kind of call, that kind of news. I mean, would shake me more than the car accident itself. I mean, just so it also belongs to brothers who probably were thinking of things maybe left unsaid. It belongs to family and friends and loved ones who sat in a waiting room for 8+ hours while I went through a really dangerous surgery called a craniotomy, where they removed half my skull to allow the brain to swell. Um,
Okay.
Probably friends, family clinging on to happy memories and hopes to ease the pain. This story, that part of my story, belongs to them because I don't remember that, but they do. And I will always hold that for them, to that part of the story.
Yeah, as you mentioned before, that you said the family are going through their own trauma,
Mhm.
that experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they remember it, right? As a brain injury survivor, we don't remember. And yeah, that's a struggle in itself, memory. But imagine, I wish I could take that memory away from them. I do. I'm like, hey, you want a piece of my brain injury just for a second so you can forget? Because that's traumatic in itself. But, after I woke up, I survived the surgery, obviously. Once I woke up, I recovered phenomenally. I mean, it was a miracle. It was a blessing. Within weeks of waking up, I was walking, I was talking. I mean, everything that doctors put limitations on me, I was like, not a chance. Now, granted, I still had half a skull. So there was still that confidence factor. I was 18 years old, looking in a mirror with half a skull. I felt ugly. I felt stupid. So I'm not taking away that, but I was recovering really well. And I was only in the hospital for a month and a week before I was released, which is a quarter of the time they expected me to be in rehab.
Yes.
But, when I got home, and this is where I call it the illusion of recovery, and, coaching brain injury survivors now, I see this is more common than there's brain science behind it. But when I got
Mhm.
home, the invisible side of my injury really began to show itself. And I know it's weird to say show itself, but to me, I could see it. And this was the emotional side of my brain damage. I damaged my frontal lobe and I became very aggressive, very impulsive, depressed, and my emotions were pretty much just doing whatever they want to for no logical reason. And eventually I was taken to a mental hospital for some weeks to see what's going on in my brain. And for years, I did struggle with this. I struggled with seizures. I was in and out of the hospital with seizures. I was in and out of the hospital for passing out. I had other brain surgeries. I had an infection, and it was years. Now the emotional side came back, after I would say it was for probably for years too, but it was a struggle. And I'm very blessed to be where I am today.
Just what's your current age at the moment?
I'm
29. Okay,
don't make me say out loud. I'm about to be 30 this month.
I'm asking because your accident happened when you were 18 years old. I'm sure that's pretty. I mean, it's different from now because we didn't really have much social media back then to get help
Mhm.
like we are right now. It's pretty amazing how you're helping others and with for that are anyway. So, what would you say is the hardest part of your recovery that people don't usually see?
Well, I would say the hardest part of my recovery was it's a double-edged sword, to be honest with you. It was the emotional side was, obviously dealing with the aggression and and dealing with depression was extremely difficult. But it was and I say double-edged sword because there's good and bad to this side, and that's the awareness. I think awareness is key into a recovery. But the awareness on the other side was the hardest part because I was aware of what I was doing, but I had no control over it at that time. And so when I saw myself acting out, getting aggressive, putting holes in walls, verbally and physically, in some cases abusive, I wish I didn't have that awareness because that awareness, when it came to sight, made me hate myself. And that awareness was really the hardest part. But on the other side, double-edged sword is when I began to have awareness of how my brain was acting and why it was acting this way, I was able to make intentional moves to heal. So that's why I say it's sort of a double-edged sword.
So, how did your perspective on life change after your brain injury?
Wow, that's first of all, great question. I was moving through life before, and now I'm living life. And if that makes sense, like I was moving, I was doing things, but what the purpose behind it wasn't really big enough to where it is now. Like before, I was just, and I wasn't a bad person before. I was a good kid, I was a good brother. But now I live with intention, and I'm finding ways to live life, but not just for myself, but help others live as well. So that perspective change was a real big benefit.
So it seems like that's one of the silver linings of this injury.
It was
That's nice.
not just for me, but thankfully now over the years for others as well. I'm doing things for others. And I see that just like you, Parker, you're doing the same. And I say it's a beautiful symptom of trauma because we see this a lot. I mean, we do almost, I would say 90% of survivors I worked with, even if they're still in the middle of the storm, they want to do something to give back. And it's like they barely can at that point in their recovery feel like they're drowning, but they're still reaching back to help someone else. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like we're not necessarily giving them complete direction, but giving them a path that they could follow if they're interested in coming.
Yeah. Hope. It's really hope.
What's one thing that'll do the most in recovery that you'd recommend to other survivors?
That's a great question because I'm going to counter it because I don't think it was a thing. I think it was a series of people. It was support. When I got more connected with other survivors, caregivers, professionals that cared deeply, it was that community, or as you put it, a tribe that helped me. So people say, what was the big turning point? There wasn't a point. It was a series of people. And that's why I always say, we can't heal in isolation. So if someone was to ask me, a survivor say, hey, what advice can you give me? I was like, you got to surround yourself around people who are in the same boat with you. You just had to open your eyes because they're there.
If someone with a brain injury is struggling right now, what would you like? What would you want them to hear?
I would say find your tribe. I love the word tribe. And then I know it sounds difficult, but once again, you mentioned it earlier, we're in a world of social media, which is a beautiful aspect. I struggle with it because I'm like, oh, I can't post videos. It's awkward sometimes to stare at a camera and talk. I love doing this because I can interact with you. You've seen me on stage. I love to interact, but talking to a camera is difficult. But we have these groups on Facebook. I mean, there's tons of support groups. You post a question on there, you post you're struggling, you're getting 50 plus comments. We have Brain Injury Association of America, and then every state has their own association. We do have people out there and they do want to help. We just got to be willing to reach our hand out for it.
I love that, man. So you're a brain injury coach. Will you explain what that means?
Absolutely, partner. So I started off back in 2017. You can see my logo back there, Luke Speaks. And it started off as, well, speaks. I was a motivational speaker. I loved being on stage. I loved bringing the energy. It was something that just gave me thrills. And but it took time to master it and craft it. But I loved it. And but during COVID, speaking wasn't really a big thing anymore. I wasn't able to get on stage and do this. So, I had this person reach out to me and said, like, hey, we've seen you. Do you ever think about like coaching? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I love talking to people. So I became a certified life coach. But then the more I started to connect with these people online and get the most dopamine I've ever gotten from coaching someone, giving them hope, and then leaving that call was like lit up for the whole entire day. I wanted to teach them what I have learned, which in my recovery was my brain. The more I learned about the brain, the more I learned how it worked, what was happening, that awareness gave me that intention. And I wanted others to know that as well. Like, you're not broken, you're healing. And a lot of what we see in a brain injury is like, hey, I'm having these problems. It's the brain doing healing. We just have to guide it. We have to direct it because our brain is designed to survive, not to thrive, not to live. It's up to us to sort of guide it. So I became a certified brain coach. I was already a certified life coach. So what I do as a brain injury coach is, first of all, the biggest thing is I listen. I'm there to listen to you because that means a
Hmm.
lot. Just to listen, not to reply, but just to get it and to understand, to let you know we've been on similar paths, but different shoes. And so listening's key. But as a brain injury coach, and what I do, because there's many different out there, is I teach people how their brain works, what exactly is going with it, so we can align our actions to heal the brain, right? So we can live with hope rather than uncertainty.
So what does progress look like to you now?
Progress. Dude, you're killing it with these questions. I love that. So that's a big thing we see in the brain injury community is the word progress. And why do we see progress? Why do we not see progress? And so progress to me is still, and it always will be, those small intentional wins. I'm a brain injury survivor. I still do struggle, right? And that's the thing, it's an invisible injury. So I'm looking for those small intentional wins. Sometimes the ones we see, sometimes the ones we can't see. That's why we have support. Where it could be like, hey, dude, awesome job. Like, for example, when we got on this call, you told me that you watched my videos and you were like, dude, you're an awesome speaker. Sometimes I don't see that because I talk all the time. But hearing it from you is, hey, thank you. That's a sign of progress. I can't always see it. So once again, that's why it's important we surround ourselves around people. Because when we're in the picture, when we're there, we might not be able to see the outside of things. So progress comes from those small intentional wins, the ones we see, but surrounding ourselves around people who can let us see them as well and remind us.
Luke not only went through a severe traumatic brain injury, but he's now helping others. And he is a strong, and I've experienced this from watching videos. He's a strong, confident leader. And I highly recommend you follow him so you can understand more about his situation, how he helps people, and how he can help you. And could you tell us your Instagram or your
Yeah,
where
so
your platforms?
Yeah, so it's Luke Speaks TBI, and that's everything. So, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, but my website's even LukeSpeaksTBI.com. And it's literally what I do. I speak on traumatic brain injury. But I also don't, I want to make this clear because I've had someone, I've worked with people with brain injuries. We see traumatic, and but let me make this clear. And I think this is a really important point. We talked about this at the national conference. Every brain injury is traumatic. I want to say it again for the people. Every brain injury is traumatic. Yes, there's an umbrella called the acquired brain injury, and then you go down to traumatic and non-traumatic. We're looking at strokes, infections, which I had during my recovery, other types of internal brain injuries. But understand every brain injury is traumatic. So I just want to make that clear because I say Luke speaks TBI, and I don't want anyone to ever think that I don't think you have to have a car accident or you have to be thrown off a horse, or you have to impact your head really hard. You don't. It's traumatic when it comes to brain injury, but that doesn't mean you can't heal with purpose.
One last thing. This is not only from my what I thought from the beginning, which I've seen better now, but a lot of people thinks that traumatic brain injuries and strokes things are different. What would you say about that?
So people think that traumatic brain injury versus strokes are different.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, they're the same thing, but like people could mix them a bit.
Yes. So from a brain perspective, they are different, right? When we're
Yes.
talking about stroke is internal, is more direct on certain parts of the brain. We can see that, but it also depends on, you have two different types of stroke, hemorrhagic and ischemic. But in traumatic brain injury is the external force.
Okay.
But if you're damaging your brain, just look at like you're damaging your brain. And so both are very similar in that case. Both recoveries can be very similar and very different. So if we're saying, hey, stroke is a lot different than a traumatic brain injury because of the healing process, well, I can hit my head, you can hit your head, and they can still be very different healing processes. So why
Yep.
are we? I would say they're all very different. All traumatic brain injuries are different. All strokes are different. Everything is different. But one thing we all have in common is we did damage our brain. Healing is going to be difficult. Healing is going to be invisible. That's why it's up to us to continue to bring awareness, advocacy, and education.
Well, Luke, I really appreciate you doing this video, and I'll definitely stay in contact with you.
Yeah, man, this has been. First of all, everybody, Parker is outside in 95-degree weather. This isn't, I mean, that's a way to stay committed. I'm inside with a fan blowing on me right now, and it's only 80 degrees outside. So, commitment, my friend, commitment.
It's beautiful here, man. It's beautiful to talk to another survivor, talking about survivors, and just the beautiful nature.
Yes,
But yeah,
nature. Nature is very important for the brain, too.